to First Things First. It is Friday. I am Jenna Wolf. Start with the Golden State Warriors.
People aren't as happy as you, Jenna.
No, clearly not. No one has reached out on Twitter yet, and it's been like 2.5 minutes. I wonder if Kevin Durant was thinking, hey, it's my first game back after missing 6 games with a rib injury. My team hasn't been playing well. I think I'll play 17 minutes, score just 10 points, and then get thrown out of the game on a double technical. That's exactly what happened. Durant tossed on his 5th ejection, 14th tech of the season right before the half. His head coach, Steve Kerr, said he was ejected for, quote, saying the magic word. I doubt it was please. Durant spoke to the media after the game.
This is your 5th ejection, it's the most in a while. Is there anything you can pinpoint? Is there anything that you've thought about over the course of these 5 that you can say, like, this is why it's happening more than in years past?
Usually just bad calls. I'm protesting. Pretty simple. you wanted a deeper reason? Oh, is that a character? Is it a character flaw that I get thrown out of games? I hope not. I hope you don't look at it that way. Jeez. No, just mainly just foul calls that I think they're wrong, and I tell them about it, and they don't like how I say it. I get tossed. I mean, I could definitely talk to them a little better, I guess.
I don't know. I think it might be a slight character flaw when you keep getting thrown out of the game because you lose your temper. CeCe, what was your reaction to Kevin Durant's, let me say it like this, NBA-leading 5th ejection? That means most in the NBA.
I was shocked. I was shocked because of all the things that, just have transpired, but not only in the last several weeks, not only since he's been with Golden State, but ever since he basically, the day he got the MVP, the day he...
The finals MVP?
No, the day he got the MVP of the league.
Okay.
And he gave the trophy to his mom, and he made the incredible speech how his mom was the real MVP. He went through how he was raised, him and his brothers, how his mom sacrificed, and the things that she did, and how he looked up to her, growing up in Washington, D.C., very, very humble beginnings. And at that time, everyone adored Kevin Durant. He was amazing. In college at the University of Texas, people don't remember, 26-12. As a freshman, 26-12, and decides to go to the NBA. Not a guy struggling, like he's had success at every level he's been at. And that being the pinnacle that day when he told his mom that she was the real MVP. Subsequently, what's happened since then? I don't know who the guy is. I wish I knew who he is, because when you cheer for people, because I'm a fan of the game. I'm a fan of Kevin Durant, how he plays basketball. So you would like to think, be a little naive to think you just know him just a little bit. But in Kevin Durant's case, I would have to question myself, man, did I ever know him? Do I ever understand, who he is as a person?
And what did Chris Broussard say that KD has told him?
This is the real him.
Yeah, that was an act in OKC.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm not used to that. But if you're saying it, not someone else is saying it. Oh, this Kevin Durant that's in Golden State, someone else, a buddy of his, a colleague of his, an ex-teammate, saying, oh, that's the real him. But no, it's him. He told Chris Broussard, this is the real him. So, wow, this is what we're going to get used to seeing. And even getting ejected last night for the 5th time, to me, just not self-aware, just not understanding, there might be a problem. Yes, if I pay my money, forget that I'm an announcer. I work a 9-to-5 job. I decide to bring my spouse or one of my kids or one of my colleagues from the office. I decide to go to a Golden State game. It's not like you can afford a lot of these games. It's not like you're going to see a bunch of them. I don't expect Kevin Durant to get thrown out in the first half, especially when he's coming back from injury. So forget being an announcer. As a consumer of the products, the people in Golden State got robbed last night. So I don't know who Kevin Durant is. I don't know what we're going to see, but last night as a fan, I was very, very disappointed that he would get thrown out before halftime when he's been out a period of time with the rib injury, and the team needs him now more than ever.
And what happened before I get into it, what happened to Andre Iguodala later in the game?
Oh, because he had to start the second half. He's already got a gimpy knee. He's already had one of the least productive years that he's had. He ends up being taken to the locker room at the end of the third quarter. He can't play anymore. So he ends up playing 20 minutes because KD decides to take it upon himself and cuss out the referee, especially when you know you're going to say the magic word. It's like getting into an argument with your spouse where you know what to say to get you in that really hot water.
Yes.
So he goes right there.
And he goes, and listen, there's so much here to unpack for a moment. First of all, on the ejection, as little pictures we can get, it is known. Kevin Durant was begging people to watch basketball. Well, on this podcast with Bill Simmons, which we'll get into in a moment, because the irony was not lost on me that this happened on the day that part 2 of his 7th podcast with Bill Simmons came out, and where he says, watch basketball, watch basketball. I watch an unhealthy amount of basketball. If you argue with the ref while the play is going on, that is an automatic technical for every official in the league. He walks over and approaches him, basically
while Golden State still has possession.
Exactly right. While it's still going on, you know you're getting a tee. And then when he drops what appears to be, Steve Kerr called it the golden word. If you read lips, it seems to be MF. You know that's a technical. It wasn't a 1 technical ejection. It was a 2 technical ejection that he could have avoided. He could have gotten the 1 technical, gone to halftime, and that been it. Knows his team needs him. Knows they're undermanned, all these things. But the irony is not lost on me that this comes out the same day. This happens the same day this podcast comes out. Why am I focused on the podcast? Because I listened to all 2.5 hours of this thing. And you know that MVP speech? He and his business manager agent, Rich Kleinman, laugh and joke during this podcast about how people miss the old KD. And he says, oh, yeah, MVP speech KD, laughing at it. He says repeatedly over these 2.5 hours, I'm as happy as I've ever been. I just wish people would watch basketball, would talk about basketball, instead of psychoanalyzing me, instead of talking about, is KD happy? Is KD angry? Why does everyone ask these questions? Well, let me try to answer these questions, because nobody questions how good of a basketball player you are.
No.
It's because you have now been ejected more than any player in the last 25 years not named Rasheed Wallace.
Wow.
Think about that. A guy who going into this season had 2 career ejections, now has more ejections in one season than any player in the league over almost 30 years. And by the way, that's only because the data only goes back 28 years. I'm not certain really what the record is. Rasheed Wallace is the only one who's been ejected more. And that's despite, by the way, KD missing time due to injury. Like, he maybe could go get Rasheed's record.
Right.
And Rasheed was considered one of the biggest hotheads in the history of the sport. There is no rational explanation for the way Kevin Durant has conducted himself. And it is not too harsh to say, I cannot remember a player of his caliber ever acting like this. The closest I could think of is Barkley, but Barkley, that was his motif, was I'm no role model, I might throw a dude through a glass window, and and Barkley was a legitimate tough guy. I never remember a guy who is one of the 2 best players in the world also being the guy most likely on any given night.
Right. I don't see us accepting this behavior. Forget top 2. Any of the top 10 NBA players, this is not conduct that we would accept.
What if Damian Lillard was regularly getting thrown out of games? But he doesn't have to be LeBron or KD or Steph.
Right.
Even if you're a Warriors fan and you're a huge fan of Kevin Durant and you want to justify the fact that he's a passionate player, however you want to spin it, as soon as that carries over and starts affecting the team, as soon as other guys have to start stepping in and then they get hurt, as soon as the fact that you've lost 7 of 10, you know the rest of your guys are out, you know what's ahead for you when the playoffs are about to start, when it starts affecting the team, then I think that's when you realize that you've got a problem.
And when you bring up the team, on the replay, if you watch the reaction of the bench, none of his teammates...
It is not your normal reaction in pro sports when your superstar is getting ejected.
None of his teammates look at him on the bench. None of them say anything to him. Kerr doesn't even react. And this is obviously going in a game. He's back, Steph's out. I'm just curious real quick, because I know we're up against CeCe. If you went into a game knowing Randy is out, do you have a bigger responsibility than a regular football game to your teammates, to the other guys, a higher level of expectation of what you're going to have to do?
There is no doubt. All the responsibility is on me. Like they are relying on me in a different way. That's what people say, well, the next man up. Well, not for great players. Some of that workload is put on you.
On you.
And now for role players, it's the next guy up.
And if in a game that Randy was already out with an injury, forget the fact that Clay's out as well, but if you were to be kicked out of that game,
it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to my teammates. What about the offensive linemen? They need big plays. Like, it's irresponsible to them. It's not really being in the moment, understanding what the team needs. It's really all KD is thinking about is himself. He wasn't thinking about anything about Golden State, Steve Kerr, Draymond finally coming back. He wasn't thinking about Iggy's bad knee. Like, he wasn't thinking about that. And because he wasn't thinking about it, the rest of the people suffer. And Andre Iguodala being taken out of the game later on, which I believe, because this is one of his worst years ever. And I believe that will affect him more minutes that he has to play going through the playoff run.
Not only that, he knows exactly what it takes to get kicked out of a game. He knows exactly what he's not allowed to say that'll get him tossed out of a game. And he goes there immediately.
And he knew he had gotten the first technical.
Yeah.
It was not, there are one technical ejections. This was a technical. It was a quick second technical.
And then
but it was, it's
I'm not saying he did this, but sometimes in sports, like, you don't have it. And because he had said his ribs were banged up, he missed all those games. In the first half of that game, man, Milwaukee was banging him. Giannis was banging him. Giannis had a forearm in his rib cage.
They're all going to, and that's what you said.
He had a forearm in his rib cage, and that could have been an easy way to get out of there by going to it, calling the guy an MF, and being thrown out because Giannis was coming to play.
Finally, the Thunder fell to the Spurs last night. Russell Westbrook had what we in the business call an off night. 0 for 4 from three-point land. Airballed 2 crucial shots down the stretch. Chris Carter, how worried are you about the Thunder at this point?
I'm not worried about Russ. I'm not worried about Paul George. Not worried about a bunch of stuff in OKC. That Syracuse guy, I'm worried about him, though.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man, I'm worried about he's run out of gas. He doesn't have any legs. They have a problem rebounding the ball. Now, it's easy to focus on West at the end of the game, but I'm concerned that if they're going to move forward, if they're going to have a chance to advance, man, Carmelo's got to play better basketball. And I think he's done as an elite player. And I believe he's going to get exposed in the playoffs because he can't get the type of space to get his jump shot. And it's hard for him and some other great players. It's hard for them to be complementary players. It's hard for him to find his way with Paul George and Russ. So I'm concerned about Melo and his ability to play at an elite level and to be able to do that for a month or so standpoint in the playoffs. I don't think that's going to happen.
I do not hold Melo to the standard I hold Russ to. Period, point blank. That Melo at this point in his career, in year 15, is a tertiary player at best. He didn't think that. He thought he was a primary or secondary player, but he is not. Like, right now, would you rather be given tertiary?
Can you help me?
A third tier. Yeah, primary, first tier, secondary.
I know there's people watching you on the show. They might know. But there's people who I know, they don't know. And they appreciate me making
Nick, do you want to know what my people think?
No. Listen,
Jenna's not talking enough.
I'm not going to focus on Melo. I am going to focus on Russ, one of my 5 favorite basketball players ever. Man, he has got to have more awareness at the end of these games.
He's had it all year, though, for the most part.
Not on his three-point shooting, CC. Not on the fact that he is back to being a sub-30% three-point shooter and just keep shooting them. I know that last year he had a good three-point shooting year by his standards, but you can't take those shots. Our score bug is covering it up. These are the critical moments of the game. That is one of the worst shots you're ever going to see down 3 in that spot.
Hasn't that been him, though? Isn't that him?
You got to grow and evolve as a player. And you got to grow and evolve.
You said a whole bunch there. Grow and evolve. Is Russ going to do? You always said, man, hard-hitting Russ, just playing hard. Man, I love it. What about playing smart?
Right. He could play just as hard and play a little smarter. Paul George, meanwhile, by the way, is having the best three-point shooting year of his career. We're knocking Melo. Melo was 3 for 3 from 3 in that game. You didn't have to go for a 3 at the end of the game, but if you were going to, unless it's wide open, Russ shouldn't be taking it. Russ could get to the bucket, get it to a 1-point game. That's an important game for you. Like, Oklahoma City absolutely could fall to the 8 seed. They absolutely could fall to the 7 seed and be facing the Warriors. Like, they don't want to do that. Right now, they sit here as the 5 seed. Had they won that game, by the way, the team who's tied with them, San Antonio, if they won that game, they're in good position to have a home playoff series. I love Russ. He's got to play smarter basketball.
The one thing I don't like is the coach. I believe it's a lot of the coach's responsibility to reel him in. Russ needs to play the game a different way. And that's one thing I don't like about the NBA. Guys have some awful shot selection. Guys you get a green light to, that don't mean you can shoot anytime. And I believe that's a lot of the coach's responsibility. And I don't believe Russ is getting the type of information that would stop him from shooting those types of shots.
We now welcome in our NBA analyst, Chris Broussard. Chris, you know a little something about basketball, about throwing things really far into a small container of sorts.
I heard you were like, I was going to say Jordan,
who's the best
but
three-point shooter of all time? Steph Curry.
out
Just
here
like
yesterday.
Steph. I threw a protein bar this big, 62 feet across a conference room
62 feet.
into a vessel this big, which was situated under
Cost
a
me
table,
$100
nothing but net.
$100.
I gave her
Good
5-to-1 odds. I thought it was a free $20. Cost me $100.
Oh, I
I'm
wish you
proud
were
of
there to
you. I'm
analyze
happy.
it. Just
I'm
the
happy
game and
for
the
you.
arc.
Don't worry. When Nick goes to L.A., we'll have plenty of time to do that. Yes.
All right.
My new point guard.
Chris, 2 nights ago when Joel Embiid went down, we were relieved it was just his face and nothing that might keep him out of the lineup. 2 to 4 weeks. Turns out he broke his face, an orbital fracture to be specific, and it will require surgery, and he's expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks. He could be back for the first round of the playoffs, which start in 15 days. Chris, how much does Embiid's injury change the Eastern Conference playoff landscape at this point?
Well, obviously, it depends on when he gets back. And there have been players that come back in 2 weeks, and there have been those at 4. So if he's back, they should be okay. I think where they end up right now, they're 4th, tied with Indiana. I don't think they can hold off the Pacers to keep home court advantage. I do think they can stay in the 5 slot ahead of Milwaukee because they have about a 3.5 game lead. So that's critical where they end up. But in the first round, without Embiid, I think Indiana would take them down. I'd give Philly a chance because now that they have Marco Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, they are better than they used to be without Embiid. They play differently. They can play small. Those guys can shoot. What I hope happens, CC, is while Embiid's out, I don't know if it will. What I hope happens is Simmons takes it upon himself to score more. Because we know he can't shoot, but he can score. He's giving you 16 points a game. He shoots 50% from the floor. So if he's more aggressive, obviously that'll open up more shots for his teammates. But I think I'd like to see him get 19, 20, 21 points a night because he's capable of doing it. If he does that when Embiid gets back, they'd be even better. So, you know, they have a shot against Indiana without Embiid, but I'd pick Indiana probably.
Yeah, I would probably pick Indiana in that series. Unfortunate that he's not able to play these 2 seasons, but fortunate that it is the type of injury that we have seen people play with some type of face mask in a couple weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. We know that he is going to be back. So that is the good news. As far as Ben Simmons, the only thing I'm concerned about him, if I need him to score more, based on the physicality of playoff basketball, it's harder to get to the bucket. Now, we know his range. Jenna got this one down pat. His range is 3 to 5 feet.
That's about from you to Jenna, that's about his range.
I mean, it's 3 to 5 feet, but they do have some better options now because they can spread the court with some shooters. But this Philly team, I think everything hinges on who and Joel Embiid is. And watching him play, not only on television this year, the last week he was at the Garden. And I went to the game and I got there early specifically because I wanted to see how he interacted with other players and with the fans and the referees. Man, he's got such respect for the game. Yeah. He goes up, he shakes everyone's hand at the scorer's table. He introduces himself to every referee, or the ones that he doesn't know, the ones he does know. He greets them. Just the overall appeal that he has to his teammates, the childlike affection that to me, I believe, there's a lot of guys who are good. But there's only a few guys like Shaq who really draw people to them. So for me, this is beyond an injury. It's about the personality. And I don't believe Philadelphia and that they think that they can go far without his overall personality, forget his skill. I mean, as far as leading the NBA in points in the paint, And you're like, that's
maybe the defensive player of the year.
I mean, those things right there are concrete things that you can build on. But for me, the intangibles, they love him. And his overall personality, I believe, affects especially how young they are.
Listen, we all agree that if he misses the first round, it drastically changes the playoffs. I think if he's there for game 1 of the first round, this has already drastically changed the playoffs. This was a team that since Christmas, that's a long time now, 42 games, has the 3rd best record in the NBA.
People will be shocked by that.
3rd best record in the NBA since Christmas. Houston, Toronto, Philly. This is a team that as we sit here today, has the same number of losses as Cleveland. With a healthy Joel Embiid, with games Atlanta, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Detroit, one game against Cleveland, and Dallas, Atlanta, and a game against Milwaukee at the end of the year, they could have caught or passed Cleveland.
Yes.
So think about what that means. You're the 3 seed then. We don't know who you'd get in the first round. You'd be a heavy favorite. You then get an injured Boston team in round 2, where I would favor you. And then I believe you get a Cleveland team that at the very least you have home court advantage over in the Eastern Conference Finals. You avoid Toronto. A team that if you don't believe in Cleveland out of the East, you got to believe in Toronto. You would be avoiding Toronto until at least the Eastern Conference Finals, and you would guarantee you only have to play one of Toronto or Cleveland if you got the 3 seed. They could have gotten the 3 seed. They were going to have a chance to go beat Cleveland and take it from them. And even if they didn't beat Cleveland, to pass them anyway. This team's 3-8 without him this year. This is, I think Ben Simmons Rookie of the Year. This is a devastating injury to the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Like, this is, in my eyes,
devastating.
I think it's devastating.
Even if he's back for game 1.
Because
there's no guarantee they were going to catch Cleveland and pass them for the 3rd seed.
Agreed. There's no guarantee. But now they're going to be in a position, in my eyes, where instead of potentially being the 3 seed, they're the 5 seed. And they're on the road in every series. Indiana, by the way, can present some problems for them because I think Oladipo, they don't have a great answer for him defensively, as good as they've been defensively. It's just, and I've watched these guys play with the mask who don't typically play with the mask. Rip Hamilton's the exception.
Kyrie hate it.
These guys hate the mask. And when you're a big guy and the refs tend to let you get bumped and banged, having an eye socket fracture, like coming off surgery on that, I think this is a huge loss.
But let's get, first of all, Philly being in the playoffs is good news.
Yep. No doubt.
All right. Now, he doesn't have an injury that's going to affect him moving forward. It seems like that guys have come back from this on a regular basis. Like, now, the injuries and how injuries play out, I believe they will have a drastic influence on the playoffs, because I believe guys going into the playoffs are getting hurt. We're going to have several guys get hurt in the playoffs. Like, that is definitely going to happen. I believe this will affect the seeding, but I don't believe it will affect Philadelphia and their arc drastically.
Unless he's out.
In the future? You're talking about in the future?
Well, I believe he's going to play.
Okay.
I believe he's going to play. I believe it won't affect them drastically in this year's playoff.
Yeah, I'm with you. We've seen guys, you're right, even if they don't like the mask, but they still can play well. I can't recall somebody whose game just fell off because they were wearing the mask. So if he's there I hear what you're saying. If they had caught Cleveland and finished 3rd, that does change a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee they were going to do that. And you ran down the list. They got some bad teams. They got some teams that want to lose, so they still might end up with a strong record over these last 8 games.
Just real quick, you're right. There was no guarantee they were going to catch Cleveland. I feel like it is now guaranteed they won't catch Cleveland. And I think that's
Cleveland, you can't guarantee how they going to play.
That's true. You never know.
Are you worried about Cleveland? We're going to take a break. Former NFL head coach Eric.
Former fellow NFL head coach. Jenna makes one shot for $100, and now she's a former NFL head coach.
Should we talk about it?
I thought she was saying former felon.
Nah, man, only one of those on this show.
Go ahead and read your own introduction, please, because apparently I'm.
We're just giving
Eric.
her a hard time.
I know.
Really?
It's adorable.
Friday.
Friday's so
Almost missed
cute.
a handshake.
Eric Mangini is here. What's up, Eric?
With that introduction, I don't know where to go with this.
I know. Well, he's not a felon, so we like that. We're going to talk some Tom Brady this morning. If it was up to him, there'd be no backup quarterback on the team. Get rid of the position altogether. As we learned in Tom vs. Time, his documentary, he plans on playing till he's 87 and will never get hurt. Unfortunately, though, football life doesn't work that way, and Robert Kraft knows it. His biggest fan, Bob, admitted eventually the Patriots will have to come up with a backup plan at quarterback.
I'm going to put my fan hat on and, obviously at some point we have to, because not just that, but you think about it. Think what happened in the 08 season when in the first quarter against Kansas City, Tom goes out. And how many people would have said that Matt Castle would have led us to an 11-5 season? So once again, I put my faith and confidence in Bill. And he knows his responsibilities, and anything can happen, even if Tom comes in tip-top shape.
Interesting, Coach, that a couple months after getting rid of their backup plan, they now need to talk about a backup plan. Let's talk about timing here. When do the Patriots realistically start needing to look past Tom Brady?
Now. Every single year that he's operating at the quarterback position is a little bit on borrowed time. We're as much as Tom versus time and his diet and the things that he does help him and are in some ways groundbreaking. It's against the norm. It's against the averages, and they've got to go get somebody. And you want to have that person because it's going to be in the draft. You want to have that person in the system being able to learn underneath him for as long as you possibly can. And I'm sure they thought Garoppolo, with that timeline, was going to be that guy this year.
No one expected Tom.
And now they're resetting it, but it's really borrowed time. Every year is borrowed time.
Everyone's going to focus, understandably, on the Garoppolo trade, right? I want to bring up a different trade, the Jacoby Brissett trade. Because Jacoby Brissett was not a guy who was about to have a brand new enormous contract they were going to have to pay. Jacoby Brissett was not a guy they got a second-round pick for. And Jacoby Brissett was a guy who had actually played more during Brady's suspension than Garoppolo did. If you remember, Garoppolo went out in the early in game 2.
Yep.
Brissett played the rest of that game, all of game 3, and then the fourth game, which obviously they lost. And Jacoby Brissett, a guy who I know both of you have tremendous respect for. Bill Parcells thinks very highly of Jacoby Brissett. And the return from him was a guy they didn't really use this year, in Philip Dorsett. And so when they made both those trades, now you feel like that second-round pick they got from San Francisco, like that might be used on a quarterback. Like, because when we've seen the Patriots recently draft quarterbacks, I know Matt Castle was a 7th-rounder. But Ryan Mallett was a second-day pick instead of a third-day pick. Jimmy Garoppolo, second-day pick. They've spent second and third rounders on quarterbacks during the Brady era more than once. And so you can't have Brian Hoyer, I don't think, as your backup plan going into a season. It's one thing to acquire him mid-season when you've traded away your other quarterbacks because he knows the system, but Brian Hoyer is no long-term solution for them.
Yeah, you can't look at New England and what they're doing at quarterback without looking at both of the trades. The Jacoby Brissett, I thought you brought up a good point, because right now, if he was their third, they would be in a lot better shape. But in deciding to trade him, even before they traded Jimmy Garoppolo, it made the Tom Brady decision. It's right now. Like, they got to get someone for Tom Brady right now. Now, with great players like Tom, who have the cachet that they have a little more say in when they're going to get out, they delay your plan because they performed so well when he was 36, 37, 38, and 39. When Nick Wright dropped the gauntlet on him, he said, hey, how y'all like 40? And because he's been so great, he has delayed Belichick. Because you know what was going to happen? The next starting quarterback for New England Patriots, you know who that was going to be? Jimmy Garoppolo. But Tom played so well that they couldn't get off of Tom, and they have to let Tom finish what he's doing. He has done things that make Belichick have to go beyond what his plan was. But I like the fact that Mr. Kraft said, Belichick knows what his marching orders are. And among his many, many responsibilities, finding them a quarterback after Tom Brady is at the top of that. And I believe this year they will speed that up because of the 2 trades that they made last year, and they will have a quarterback on their roster because New England is used to winning.
Right.
And they know they cannot do that with their current situation with Brian Hoyer being the replacement for Tom Brady. He is a placement holder for a younger player who will take over when Tom's done.
Brian Hoyer, though, is going to be the backup this year. And with Jacoby Brissett, they didn't feel like he was a long-term answer. So that's why they moved on from him when they did. Now they've got to go
and got better than value of any other point. Like people say, oh, this is the hottest he ever was. When Indianapolis, when they lost luck in getting a first-round player in Philip Dorsett, even though it hasn't transferred over, that guy was a high first. I mean, he was a first-round pick.
First-round pick.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were betting that in their system he could do more than he did in Indianapolis. And sometimes when you get a fresh start, that's what you need. Now the question is, where do they go in terms of getting a quarterback? Ryan Mallett was the highest. I think it was Jimmy and then Ryan Mallett in terms of level of the draft. Most of those guys have been 3rd-round draft picks or late-round draft picks. It's going to be interesting to see how much they're willing to spend in terms of draft capital on trying to find this replacement.
This wouldn't even be a conversation except for a couple months ago. I think they started the season not sure what Tom Brady was going to do, and they planned on keeping Jimmy Garoppolo. They wanted Jimmy Garoppolo there, and then realized 6 weeks in, Tom hasn't lost a step and then had to do something about it. So it's not like they've had 5 years to think about what their backup plan was going to be.
I think Tom has played so well, he's altered any type of plan that they could.
Right.
Like Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, he would have been a nice option, but he's not a better option than trying to win a couple more Super Bowls before Tom gets out of there.
It's so funny now when I look at quarterbacks, I've totally recalibrated the age equation. And you look at Drew Brees or Eli Manning or any of these guys, and they're saying, well, they're getting old. Ben Roethlisberger's like, well, not really.
Well, history would say you're right to recalibrate. Going into the 2014 season, one time in the last 60 years in the NFL, a quarterback 38 or older had a passer rating of better than 100. It was Favre's year in Minnesota. In 2014, Peyton Manning did it. 2015 and 16, Tom Brady did it. And then in 2017, Brady and Brees did it. So something that only happened once in 60 years in the last 4 seasons has happened 5 times. Like, we got to redo this math.
That's the irony. Why didn't you show me that stat before the season?
Because I wasn't talking about over 38. I was talking about over 40.
I just think that this could be a situation, too, where they go draft 2 quarterbacks. My first year in New England, we had 4 on the roster. And if you're not sure who the replacement's going to be, go get a couple guys, let them train, let them be in the system, and see which one pans out.
Awesome.
Moving on to opening day baseball now. It always helps to make a good first impression. And Giancarlo Stanton made an incredible first impression yesterday. 2 home runs in his New York Yankees debut. That ain't bad. Who better to talk to about it than our friend Nick Swisher? Nick!
Bro, what happened? What you doing with the hair? What happened?
Yeah.
What happened to the head?
Good-looking haircut, Nick Swisher.
Hey, just trying to give you something different to look at, guys. That's all.
We love it. We love it. All right, Nick, what a way for the Yankees to open up with a new manager, and you got your new star in there. You got a really solid middle of the lineup now, and they absolutely did not disappoint. What should we expect from this Yankees lineup now with Stanton in this fold?
I think you saw a little bit of it yesterday. To be able to bring over the reigning NL MVP to an already potent New York Yankee lineup, they looked good yesterday, no doubt about it. I think just in general, opening day is such an amazing time of year because every team, every fan on the planet thinks that their team is going to have the best year ever and win the World Series. Everybody starts with zeros. And obviously for Giancarlo, there's a lot of pressure on him. Obviously coming over with everything that he brings along with him. But to be able to go out first at bat, home run, especially for him working as much as he has in the spring, to be able to jump off the page like that, especially in New York, hopefully this is something that can continue to keep happening.
Listen, we know the Yankees have the best middle of the order in baseball. Judge, Stanton, Sanchez. I don't know who's second, but it is a distant second, whomever it is. What is the biggest question mark for them, though? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. I think if there is a question mark about that, it might be a little bit of the starting rotation. If there is a weakness on that team, it has to be that.
The bullpen is par to nobody. The lineup is so potent. It almost reminds a little bit about like the old Murderers Row that they used to have. Feels like guys can do damage 1 through 9. So if you're rolling out a lineup like that each and every night with the bullpen that you already have, your starters don't feel pressured to go 8-9 innings, maybe like some other guys might have to. So hopefully that gels with them all year long. It was a great start for them. It was a great start for baseball in general, man, and it's so great to be back for sure.
Nick, in talking to Aaron Boone the day after he was named skipper of the Yankees, you know Aaron. You know the amount of pressure he's grown up. This is his family business. His dad, of course, we know about all the accolades, but also as a manager, give me something that you feel potentially can be a challenge for someone who was a good player and is just coming out of the broadcast booth.
Well, I mean, it kind of seems like that's kind of the, I guess, the rotation. You go from being a player, and then you kind of go up in the booth, and then you kind of go back down into the dugout. I think that for him to be able to spend time with them this spring training, obviously if you want a manager, you're looking for a leader. You're looking for a man or a woman in anything that can lead people. I think now with the way baseball is, with analytics, there's a lot of people that are on computers that can make decisions for you. So I think for him, the biggest thing is having that rapport, those relationships with his guys, because in a game that is always evolving, you're taking a first-year manager. I mean, he never managed anywhere. So if you're able to take that man and put him in the situation of one of the biggest franchises in the world, he's got some great people around him, but I think for him, he's done such a great job, man. He's a cool cat. He keeps kind of everything on the even keel. And I think when you are the manager of the New York Yankees, you have a lot of things to take on. So, for him, this is the thing that's working.
All right, Nick, I can already hear it from my former home in Houston. Astro fans saying, you got to be kidding me. We win the damn World Series.
Right. Yes.
Justin Verlander goes 6 shutout innings to start the year. Yep. And Yankees. Like, are we sleeping on the Astros a little bit? Like, when the team they're bringing back, should they actually be the favorites in the AL?
If you are sleeping, you better wake up, man. Don't sleep on the Astros. I mean, on paper, this is the best team in baseball. It just so happens that the Yankees are getting a lot of attention right now. But I think in general, the Astros have set up themselves maybe for a dynasty. You never know. I mean, the last defending World Series champ to get back was the 2009 Philadelphia Phillies. So it hasn't been done a whole lot of times. But this Houston Astros lineup that was already amazing. Now all of a sudden you bring over Garrett Cole from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And with Justin Verlander leading that rotation, if you're the Houston Astros, man, you are thinking of big things for sure.
Nick, let's take in what the landscape looks like in the National League. Should we just assume that the Dodgers are going to be the early favorites?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you got to look at a team like the Washington Nationals or yesterday, the Chicago Cubs, the way that they came out. I think bringing over new hitting coach Kevin Long to the Washington Nationals helps out offensively. You got to remember Bryce Harper is on a contract year. I mean, he's getting ready to break the bank for somebody.
Right.
But then again, you got Joe Madden leading the Chicago Cubs. And like we talked about, when you manager, you have a leader over there. I mean, he is the captain of that ship, and it seems like those guys have bought into what he is doing, and they have also set themselves up for success this year. So it's hard to just say the Dodgers are going to be there at the end, because on paper everyone else kind of stacks up as well. Obviously, for me, like we talked earlier, man, the season boils down to your starting pitching. If you have great starting pitching that can last, if you stay healthy, you have a good chance of being there at the end for sure.
All right, we only have about 45 seconds here, but I have to ask you about this because I'm so excited. I've always wanted to see a guy pitch one every 5 days and then go hit.